So in February 1924, Paul Whiteman and a young George Gershwin took to the stage of the Aeolian Hall in New York City and premiered a piece that has really changed the course of music history, you could say, without overstating it. And it's such an iconic piece that we're actually celebrating 100 years of this piece this year. The Edmonton Symphony is throwing a party for this piece, and the party leader is none other than the music director emeritus of the Edmonton Symphony and the piano soloist in the performance of George Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue. Bill Eddins joins me here in studio on Classical Connections. Good morning, Bill.
Hey, Aaron, that's me, isn't it?
That is you.
Woohoo!
Party leader.
Party down.
Well, Bill, it's amazing to have you on this show. I just wanted to ask you, first of all, the impact of George Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue for the history of music. Why? What?
Yeah, honestly, I think it's near impossible to overstate the impact that Rhapsody has had. Even 100 years later, personally, I think it's a magnificent piece of music. I think it is, when it's played well and played in this version that we're doing, the original Paul Whiteman version for jazz band. It is fresh, it's exciting, it's fun. God, is it fun? I mean, and it's one of those moments in history, especially in the 20th century, where all sorts of musical ideas collided. And it is as if asteroids just kind of went twang, and suddenly the moon goes off in another direction. All of music goes, really? That's possible? Let's see what we can do. And it spawned so much, not so much in jazz, of course, but it really kind of opened the ears and the eyes of people who were more into Western classical music. And also, there is also the idea of just popularity. This is a people's piece,
It is.
if there ever was one, right?
Yep, absolutely.
People know Rhapsody in Blue. They hear the theme. United Airlines almost killed it for me. But you hear almost anything from in that piece, and it's become iconic. And there's only one other piece I can really think of that's like that wasn't quote unquote strict classical. But there was a time you could walk down any street in the United States of America and just go. And people would start doing the cool scene from West Side Story.
Right. Yeah, I was doing it right.
Right, exactly. There was something about it. Every high school did it. Everybody knew it. It was just so much a part of the consciousness, and Rhapsody throughout the world, anywhere where the Western classical music tradition is, there is some thread of Rhapsody kind of going through there. It's the people's piece.
Wow. How about for you, Bill? What does this piece mean for you?
This is what we refer to, and you well know this because you're a violinist, and we worked together for many years. This is what we call a party chart.
Yep.
Right? I have done this so many times, but I only do it in the Paul Whiteman version because for me, it's just so much more interesting. I call the orchestral version the wallowing cow version. It's just this lumbering thing, and it's trying to be a kind of a Western classical piano concerto, and I don't think it works. I really don't. What makes this piece what it is that it is very much a product of the Roaring '20s. And when you hear it in that jazz band version, that's what I think comes alive.
Right.
And of course, that wasn't Gershwin. That was Whiteman and Ferdy Grofé, the orchestrator, throwing their touches in it. So it's a real as Rob McElroy would say, a dog's breakfast of a piece. But when you're that dog eating it, you're loving this stuff. But there are so many hands in why it is a wonderful piece. For example, the famous second theme. Na-da-dee, ah-da-dee-da-dee.
Yeah.
Everyone says, oh, one of Gershwin's most eloquent moments. That was almost not in the piece.
Wow.
And I heard this story from their grandnephew.
Okay.
I was out to dinner with him sometime, and he said the story goes that the Gershwins, George and Ira, would, they go to these parties in the Roaring Twenties, and people had them at houses, and of course everyone had a piano, and in that society, and George would just, of course, immediately just sit down at the piano and just start playing, because that's the tradition he came from, Tin Pan Alley and and this like that, and he would improvise and such like that, and he threw out this lovely theme one night, and Ira looked at him and said, George, that's a lovely theme. You should put that in that piece that you're writing. And that's that theme. And that's how it came about. Wow. And it's probably, it's one of the most iconic moments in music history. Yeah. When that theme comes in, I just get tears in my eyes, man, because it's just so great. And it almost didn't make it in there. But that was Ira who said, you should put that in there. And George went, oh, yeah, okay, maybe I should. And that's how it ended up.
One of the most productive dinner parties ever.
Ever. Oh, to have been a fly on the wall in the Roaring Twenties, either two places, New York and, of course, Montmartre in Paris, where it just seemed that this kind of thinking in all the art forms, whether it was music or visual or dance or whatever, it was just so prevalent. It was just such a creative time, post-World War.
Wow. So, Bill, audiences will have seen you play and conduct it last night. They'll get to see it again this afternoon and this evening. What's it like? I mean, I can't even imagine. I know I'm a musician myself, but trying to navigate performing and conducting this, air traffic control doesn't even begin to cover what I'm thinking.
Yeah. You have to be able to split your brain into about 3 different parts and keep track of all 3 of them. Because, yes, I'm playing, but I'm also supposed to be helping the orchestra, and I'm also supposed to be, interpreting, being in the music at the moment. I mean, it is. Sometimes the brain just goes, "What are you doing? Whose bright idea was this?" But it's also super, super fun. It really is. It's super fun to do this. And I said, as I've said, in this version, and to be the soloist and to think about what Gershwin was doing at the time, and just learning things about Gershwin just by playing his music and going, oh, well, so you were this kind of pianist. Okay, that tells me something very interesting. It's wonderful. I've done this so many times, and every single time that someone says, "Would you do Rhapsody in Blue?" Yep. I'm happy to do that. It's a happy day.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, that is the centerpiece of the program, but the whole concert's really a Gershwin celebration. Can you tell me a little bit more about who's joining you on stage and some of the pieces?
The great singer Denzel Sinclair is going to be with us, and I remember doing an all Gershwin show early in my tenure. You probably played on it.
Yes, I
did. With Denzel, and I just remember that being one of the more joyous times on stage. Because first of all, the guy's terrific, okay? Yeah. And then second of all, you're doing the songs of George and Ira Gershwin. when it comes to great songwriting, that tandem is probably top 5. You know, for in my world, you could decide between Schubert and Schumann. You know, you tend to one direction or the other.
Yeah.
There is Lennon-McCartney.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
There is, I would throw in Ralph Vaughan Williams.
Oh.
I really would. I just love how he writes for the voice, and I think his music is lovely. Maybe one of the French guys, either Debussy or Ravel.
Yeah.
But you can't not talk about George and Ira Gershwin. It's just the construction of how they approached writing a great song. This is true craft. And people get down on craft for some reason, and I don't understand why. If you're looking at music from a musician's point of view, and you see the thought that goes into every note, into every harmony, and how that all comes together and makes the whole, you know someone has really, really been thinking hard about the music that they're trying to produce. There are stories of George and Ira arguing over a single note for hours in one song. You know, should that be an A flat or a G? And just going at each other because of, you know, well, does it impact the words this way? Does it impact the harmony that way? This, you know, and for hours, just arguing about this because they wanted the songs to be good and to last. And you know what? Nothing against anyone who's in the top 100 today, but 100 years from now, they will probably have been forgotten. And 100 years from now, people will still be doing the songs of George and Ira Gershwin.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah, so it's just, I found myself a couple weeks ago, I pulled out the music, I think it was last week actually, and started working on some of these songs and realized I was just happy. It made me happy.
Yeah.
Happiness is working on the songs of George and Ira Gershwin. I posted that on social media immediately. This is just lovely. It's a beautiful day now, you know. And so it's such a privilege, I think, as a performer, to find oneself on stage with that music in front of you and knowing that it is literally timeless. It is of a time. There's no doubt about it. But it is, in and of itself, it's timeless.
Wow. Well, speaking of, you mentioned the word craft earlier, and joy. Tell me about metronome.
For those of you who have not yet made it to the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul, next time you're either through the airport or you're spending some time there, look for Metronome Brewery. It's my brewery. I'm a co-owner of it and co-founder. Metronome is the most unique brewery in the world. Yeah. We are the only brewery that is dedicated to. It has a. Let me change that. Yeah. We are the only brewery with a social mission that is directed towards kids' education. Wow. And that's in general, but specifically, our mission is to ensure that any child in the Twin Cities metropolitan area who has an interest in music has the opportunity to study music regardless of their socioeconomic background.
Wow.
So our theory is, look, there are plenty of programs out there that try and provide music and music education for kids, especially kids who you know, music education ain't cheap.
No.
You've got to buy instruments or rent instruments. There's music, there are lessons, or this and that and the other. And a lot of families can't afford that. And that drives me insane because I think music brings us together as a people. I think having kids study music is so beneficial for them.
Yeah.
And why aren't we supporting supporting this? Why aren't we just throwing money at it? Well, I don't understand the rationale behind not doing it.
Yeah.
So I am trying to do this project, and what we're trying to do is grow to the size of a small regional brewery,
Wow.
which would only be, any place between 5,000 and 8,000 barrels a year of production and into distribution. But we think that at that level, we would be able to pour as much as $1 million a year into music education in the Twin Cities Metro.
Wow.
And I think that would make a huge difference.
That would, yeah.
So we've been open for a couple years. The support from the community has been tremendous. The support from the music community has been outrageous. They get it immediately. That beer and music, let's go.
Yeah.
We have a wonderful small room downstairs in the basement that where we have all our ticketed performances that we call Fingal's Cave, named, of course, after that famous cave in the Hebrides. Mendelssohn wrote a piece about this and that. Pink Floyd wrote something, this and that and the other. But it's one of the great acoustic wonders of the world. And so we have Fingal's Cave down there. We only sell 50 tickets to any performance.
Wow.
That's all we can sell.
Okay.
I got my buddy Wynton Marsalis to play there a year and a half ago. It was so off the hook. I cannot even begin to tell you. I talked him into it. I said, come on, man. You help a brother out here. And by the time I had weaseled his okay out of him, it was a week ahead of time. And I know I could have called anybody and said, I don't care what gig you have Sunday night, you now have this gig. But I didn't do that.
Okay.
Instead, I called up these 3 kids. The youngest of them was the bass player. He was 19 at the time. The drummer was 20. The pianist was the old man at 25. And I said, wear your suits. You're playing with Wynton. And they just freaked out. They totally freaked out. And I can understand.
Yeah.
But, I got them there, and Wynton shows up, and they were just as nervous as you can imagine.
I can imagine.
The next hour was the most fascinating time. And there was only myself and our sound man were the only other people there. Wynton essentially just gave them a master class. Wow. He was going through what tunes they could play, trying to construct a set, suggesting certain things. And it was fascinating. And then we kept this completely under wraps. Okay. And it was, we had let just a few people know, people who had really been supportive of Metronome and helped us get off the ground, and invited them. And about an hour and a half before showtime, I posted on Facebook. I just said, Wynton Marsalis, Fingal's Cave, 6:30 p.m. That's all I did. That's all I did. And 5 minutes later, the phone rang off the hook. It was an is Wynton, and it was a mob scene. Wow. It was so great.
That's amazing.
I remember coming upstairs at one point to the tap room, and we had I had arranged to have the audio and actually some of the video up on the screens in the tap room, and the audio cranking, and there were 100 people upstairs in our tap room. Dead silence except for the music, and they're all just staring at the screen, because this was happening right underneath their feet, and it was unbelievable. Wow. They just wanted to be near it, to be part of this incredible evening. It was one of the greatest evenings of my life, without a doubt, without any doubt. It was so much fun. And Wynton had a great time, and it was just, people talk about it. I mean, were you there? Yeah, I was there. It was so great.
Oh, man. Well, I'm already planning my trip now to Twin Cities.
Yeah, please come. And if you're ever through the Twin Cities airport, our beer is at the Stone Arch restaurant right there between all the concourses. It's doing really well. We're planning an expansion
Oh, wow.
because we realized, the thing is we've got to get heavily into distribution. We want to get our beer out to the people across the Twin Cities Metro who support the idea of music education. There are a ton of them who really have that interest. And so this year is all about getting distribution up and running and our beer out the door rather than just, in the tap room or in a few places. I'm cautiously optimistic. I've yet to meet anyone who said that's a stupid idea. Matter of fact, it's everyone has just been, that's the greatest idea ever, and it's gotten us a lot of press, including national press.
Okay.
We were just on National Public Radio a few weeks ago.
Wow.
And so we're trying to do this crazy thing, man.
That's awesome.
And the beer is great.
I was going to say, I need a sample.
Well, next time I'll bring some up, but our brewmaster is actually a professional French horn player.
Wow.
And he speaks 5 languages, including 2 versions of Mandarin, Dutch, and he's a hillbilly from Arkansas. And the guy is one of the most unique and interesting people I know of.
That sounds...
And he signed on because he just loved the idea of what we were doing. He was working at a huge brewery on the West Coast, international brewery, and he heard what we were doing and said, "Can I be your brewmaster?" Sure, you can. When can you start?
Yeah.
Was that conversation?
Yeah. Wow. Well, this has been amazing. Bill Eddins, thank you so much for being with me here on Classical Connections and sharing your joy for not only George Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue, but for music, life, art, all
beer.
of this.
Don't forget beer.
And if you want to hear Bill and the Edmonton Symphony along with Denzel Sinclair and Robert Uchida on stage at the Windspear, you still have 2 more chances this afternoon at 2 p.m. and 7:30 p.m. this evening as well. WindspearCenter.com is where you can find those tickets. Bill Eddins, thank you so much again.
Always a pleasure, Aaron.